I'm the Chief Giving Day Officer here at Communities Foundation of Texas. And we are delighted you're here today to talk about a topic which, as an old annual fund director, is near and dear to my heart: donor stewardship and its partner in crime, donor retention. Today is our last in-person training for the summer, so pardon us if we're a little giddy. We love working with y'all, but we've done 19 sessions, and we've got a webinar still come, but we're delighted that y'all were able to make it in to be with us today. So here's our agenda. We plan to talk about what stewardship is, to give you some rationale for doing it, to give you some rationale for sharing with your higher-ups if you need to. We're going to give you an opportunity to hear from some of your colleagues who do it well, and then we should have plenty of time for questions and answers at the end. Our hope is that you take back to your offices not just myriad big out there ideas, but at least one really practical item that you can implement for Giving Day 2019, and I'm confident you'll take back more than one. Have any of y'all attended one of our stewardship sessions before? Okay, good. We've had them done traditionally by the Center for Nonprofit Management, CNM Connect, but we're taking a little bit different approach today, and it will be different content than what you've seen before. One other note, we will be posting all these slides, so feel free to take notes, but don't feel like you need to capture everything. So to begin with, stewardship. What is it and why do it? Well, according to the Create Lifelong Donors in 10 Easy Steps blog, and I swear it doesn't take 10 steps, stewardship is the process that occurs once a donor has given to your organization. Specifically, it refers to the relationship building and communications that take place after a gift has been received. But what does it really mean on a practical level? Well, according to a number of stewardship luminaries, and who knew there were stewardship luminaries, but there are. It means on a practical level, according to Mark Rovner, authentic engagement, not BS, although he doesn't say BS. Deeply understanding why the donor supports you and delivering on her expectations. Mark Pittman says, seeing the gift as a step in a relationship, not a one-off transaction. And this part I really like. It forces us to create systems to deepen relationships with people who are fans of what we do. Simone Joyeux, and is that not a lovely name, says, first, believe deeply in your heart and then your brain that donors matter. Second, genuinely respect and honor your donors and the difference they make in the world. And third, behave accordingly. Shannon Doolittle is very plain spoken. She says, be a nice human. Say thank you, care deeply. That pretty much sums it up. Claire Axelrod is a little more metaphorical. She says, don't treat your donors like gumballs, chew them up and spit them out. Think about it from the gumball's perspective. It wants to know it made an impact. More practically, she says, embrace thank you as the beginning of the relationship, not the end. And finally, Harvey McKinnon, who says simply, the key to donor loyalty is loyalty to your donors. So, how many of us have made a gift? Everybody in the room, right? How many of y'all have felt thanked in a personal way that really connected you to the mission of the organization? You know, significantly fewer people. And how many of y'all have had less than a stellar experience in the way you were thanked and communicated with afterwards? Okay. So what we want to do now is take a couple minutes at your table. If you're at a table by yourself, scooch over and sit with somebody else. And if you would, share with each other two things. One, what made that positive experience such a positive experience? And then, why was that less than stellar experience less than stellar? And I'll give you 2 or 3 minutes to have a brief conversation on that.
And I feel like this is like really balance. I started to do letters, I was automatically writing letters. And so I felt like there was more what you would want. Of course, I've been in my but it started just with them on the and I feel like it's like a mental power. Now the other hand was an organization I had donated to and they were one of the hardest that was very important. And I got like a thank you mailer, but nothing else. You know, it would have been nice if there was a little more content available about it, how our listeners could come and or come to so therefore the follow-up, they're working on these years before. I never heard anybody from that organization. I'm a member. Okay. And I've even joined the giving circle, which they got more money from me. Because it's like $150. But it's like you're getting something.
You're not just going to wait till the next time.
And I like that because I don't look at it and say, I'm looking at this now. And I think I have to say it.
You know, I'm trying to find it's the balance. Exactly.
But then it's the content. Okay. If it wasn't about it, they weren't
So I think you guys,
it's the content, right? It's not the good
And it's mutual benefit. If you work with a powerful women and what you do, their experience, and then your donation just goes. I want to know young girls become powerful women.
So that's the goal that I'm trying to some world, but we have to help them.
Well, I know nonprofit folks, especially if y'all are in development, we could go on talking all day and solve the problems of the world. But I want to get out of the way and let you hear some of our interesting speakers. So, now that we have a sense of stewardship, what stewardship is, why is it important? Well, here's where my annual fund director hat comes back into play. Yes, it's important to steward people because saying thank you is the right thing to do and conveying your mission is the right thing to do. But again, on a really practical level, stewardship is important because it leads to retention of those donors. So here are a few facts and figures for you that are both interesting and a little frightening. According to Blackbaud, it costs 6 to 7 times as much to acquire a new donor as it does to renew an existing donor. I would have said 2 to 3, but 6 to 7 is according to their recent study. According to a different study, retention decreased 18% in 10 years. From 2000 to 2010, it went from 29% down to 24%. And according to another study published in just February this year, the 1-year retention rate for donors, online donors, was 22%. So less than a quarter of the donors came back the second year. And the 3-year retention rate was 64%. Big difference between 1 and 3 years. I'm very pleased to be able to tell you that North Texas Giving Day's retention rates are significantly better at a 1-year level. Historically for us, about 38% of donors come back from the first to the second year. And our 3-year retention rate is 66%, just a little bit better than what it is nationally. So why are those 3 years important? Well, figures show if you can get somebody to give for 3 years, they've really made a commitment to you. You've become a habit, and they're going to continue to give. So those first 3 years of building that commitment is very important. So what are some things that drive commitment? First and foremost, achieving your mission and telling your donors what you're doing to achieve your mission. drives their commitment to you. Second and third are very straightforward. They know what to expect from you. They know what kind of customer service they're going to get. And third, provide timely thank yous. Pretty straightforward. The fourth is really interesting to me. Seeking donor input, asking them what they think, why they give, what's important to them. And number 5 over here is providing a range of experiences. And by experiences, we don't necessarily mean events. It can be communications, interactions with your staff or your board, publications, and yes, events. But experiences that show the importance of your cause, who is being served, and appreciation of their involvement. So I hope this is somewhat consistent with the conversation you had at your table. I suspect it is. So I will leave you with this thought. Acquisition of donors versus retention. Think of it as dating versus marriage. If you're married to someone, what do you do to tend to that important relationship? I think keeping that perspective will guide us as we put our stewardship plans in place. It is now my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Caitlin Guthrow, who is going to facilitate our panel and the rest of today's session. Caitlin.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. And please feel free to get another cup of coffee, water, make yourself at home. There's lots of seats up front for anyone who's just arriving. Don't be shy. And just before I bring our panelists up, if you don't mind just sharing, how many of you are participating in North Texas Giving Day for the very first time? Wow, that's fantastic. Good number. Well, I'm thrilled to bring up 4 fabulous women who I admire, and I'm so thrilled that could take a little bit of their time to join us. And I'm going to ask all 4 of them to come up and join me in these comfy chairs, but save this first one to the right for me. So we've got Jennifer Searles, Chief Development Officer with Healing Hands Ministries. We have Bianca Jackson, Chief Development Officer with New Friends, New Life. Courtney Echols, Engagement Manager with My Possibilities. And of course, Lenita Dunlap, Chief Executive Officer of Heart House. So come on over. Our microphones should be on. And I'm going to ask each of them to just share a little bit about how they approach donor stewardship within their organization, both through Giving Day and just thinking about it overall. And then I've got a few questions up my sleeve that I want to ask, and then we're going to open it up to everyone for just an informal discussion. So first, Jennifer, and we're gonna just present and get comfy. One moment. Okay, if you don't mind kicking us off.
Great. Well, I just want to say thank you to Caitlin and CFT for the opportunity to share a little bit of our perspective on donor stewardship. And so at Healing Hands, we really have 3 core values: welcome, nurture, connect. And we use these same values on how we look at donor stewardship. And so the first is starting with welcome and that authentic relationship. And so what we realize is that every donor has a cause that they want to impact, and that we, the organization, are only the vehicle for that cause. And so there's a subtle difference there, that it's not your organization that moves their heart, but it's the cause. And so then thinking about that as the foundation, one of my early mentors, to play off what Susan said, talked about donor stewardship in the way of dating. And so I never walk up to somebody and say, "Hi, I'm Jennifer, will you marry me?" People would look at you like, "Oh my God, who are you?" Instead, you have to date them. You have to go on a first date and a second date and meet their family and go on vacation. And so you have to be calm and present and listening and trying to understand their heart's cause. And so as it really relates to North Texas Giving Day, we're really excited to be a part of this movement, and we have a 3-month strategy on how we date our donors all the way up to North Texas Giving Day. And so that really starts with donor stratifying for us. So we break into 3 groups: our board, our staff, and then our individuals. And starting in June, we start our first month with just a conversation. And so what that looks like, if I said to the audience today, "What's your favorite piece of cake?" each one of you would automatically recall a different idea of cake, lemon, chocolate, whatever it is. It's the same when we start the conversation about need, only amplified even more. When we start talking about things like homelessness and poverty and children, everyone has a different definition and a different idea. So in month 1, we just start a conversation and help define the need of our organization so everyone's on the same page. We also use the same key 7 messages, but present them vastly different to each group. For example, at our staff kickoff, we had superhero Jeopardy and costumes and a photo booth and invisible water and games and fun to help them get excited. But then for our individual donors, we just started a conversation about what's been their favorite doctor experience. Then moving into month 2, that's old-fashioned tell and show, just like you were in kindergarten. So we bring out our numbers and our stories and actually talk about the work of our programs. And then in month 3, which is the month we're in right now, that's where we invite them to impact and call them to action. And this is where we really look at how can we get personal with our donors, because as we get closer to North Texas Giving Day, the noise gets louder and louder because we're all talking about our organizations. And so we have a couple key ways. So one is we do a direct mail, and it happens to go out this week, and then each donor, though, gets a handwritten note with that direct mail. And hopefully, it's talking about some personal experience that we've had with that donor between over the course of the summer or sometime the year. So it's a personal touch. Secondly, we make personal phone calls to each one of our givers for North Texas Giving Day from last year. We remind them of how impactful their gift was and invite them to continue this year. And then the last thought I'll just share is that we see North Texas Giving Day not as an event. It's not something we're selling a ticket or a table to, but it's the vehicle to create a giving moment for our donors. And so the way that this looks is recently, a few weeks ago, my teammate Adrian and I each got personal invitations out to dinner with different donors. This isn't because Adrian and I are super cool and fun to hang out with. This is because we represent the cause that's important to those donors. This is because we've spent countless hours just sitting and chatting and talking about all sorts of things. And now, when we call them to say thank you and remind them about North Texas Giving Day, we're able to frame that in a way that really supports their heart's cause, and it's not just about the event. And then last but not least, I brought a little prop today because as it gets closer to North Texas Giving Day, part of the fun of this is to keep the energy up and get things going. And it's really hard, right? When you're on day number 1025 of North Texas Giving Day, you're like, what do I have new to say? Well, I want to encourage everyone. I picked this up, and this is our plan. We're going to have bubble blowers because I don't know how you can't get excited without bubbles in your face. So that's our plan. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I love that. Really framing the importance of the cause, not necessarily just the organization, the cause and big picture, and bubble guns. I love it. All right, well, Bianca, if you could go ahead and share a little bit about your approach.
Hi everyone, my name is Bianca Jackson. I'm the Chief Development Officer at New Friends, New Life. We work to restore and empower teens, women, and children who've been exploited through sex trafficking and commercial sexual exploitation. And so I came to New Friends, New Life last August, which was toward the end of a time of transition for the executive team. So we brought in a new Chief Executive Officer, a new Chief Development Officer, we promoted a new Chief Programs Officer. So our small team of 24 had a 3-member executive team that was brand new. Is anyone in a situation where they're in an organization that's had some turnover at the leadership level? Okay, so you know that one, right? Going into something like Giving Day. And so it was really important for us to reestablish who we were and who we are with our donors. Because donor stewardship is ongoing, it's layered, it doesn't just happen on that day, it's really an ongoing process. And so this rule kind of came out of the world of interpersonal communication. You might have heard it before. It says, every interaction that you have with someone, you're either building, breaking, or maintaining trust. And so I see that as very similar in the world of donor stewardship. Every interaction you have with a donor, you're either building that relationship by sharing something new, you are maintaining that relationship by reinforcing something that they already know about who you are and what you do, or you are breaking that relationship by missing an opportunity to reinforce or build. So that's kind of the theme that we operate by when we think of what this relationship looks like. So one of the first things we had to do was over-communicate. I mean, we looked at every piece of collateral, every video, everything on social media, and I asked the same question. Does this say who we are and what we do? Because if it doesn't, we're missing an opportunity to build or maintain that relationship. So we operate under these 4 pillars of empowering survivors, educating the community, eradicating the issue through advocacy, and expanding our services and our staff. And so with every piece, I said, is this a story of empowerment? Are we showing how we educate? Are we the experts? Are we expanding? Because if it's not, then we're not being effective. And so if you are a smaller organization, that can look pretty expensive. You're like, I don't have a marketing team, I don't have a marketing firm, what are you talking about? And I suggested you use the free resources that are out there. Social media can be so effective. You can ask that same question going through your social media feed. If we are posting about it, is this telling the story? Are we building or maintaining a relationship with our donors through communication? You can also work with college students. There's so many colleges in the area, and their advertising and marketing and PR students are looking for things for their capstone courses, or looking for projects to get engaged in. And so let them help you communicate your message. And so if we move on to Giving Day specifically, some of the pointers I wanted to share with you. The first one is, what we do is we view Giving Day in context of a larger stewardship plan. Because Giving Day isn't just a magic wand. You aren't going to be able to fix everything on that day. Remember, donor stewardship is ongoing and it's layered. And so you have to determine for your organization, where does Giving Day fit in the plan? For us, it comes right before our huge luncheon. We have a luncheon coming up on October 11th. Jada Pinkett Smith is our guest speaker. But it's huge. It's our biggest fundraising event. But leading up to that, we have Giving Day. So we have goals that we must set for Giving Day as well. And we can't overlook it and jump to the luncheon, because we need the funding from both events or activities. But you really have to view Giving Day in context of what else you have going on. Because we have the luncheon coming up, it's important for us to be very strategic on our messaging for Giving Day. So we're really focused on celebrating our women's program, because that's a huge part of our luncheon message. So the new donors that come to us through Giving Day, they're going to be reinforced at the luncheon with a similar message. So see where Giving Day falls in your stewardship plan and operate accordingly. And that also involves, for us, putting our blinders on. Of course, everyone wants to make $500,000 on Giving Day, but is that realistic? Does that fit in your organization's strategy? Given your mission, given your donors, and given what you've already done leading up to this. Because remember, it's not a magic wand that's going to happen on that day. It's really a result of all you've done leading up to Giving Day itself. The other point that's up there is looking for multiple ways to win. And to me, this is huge, because it's easy to get bogged down in just that number. And if you're sitting there at, maybe $10,000 is a huge goal for you. When you're looking at that leaderboard, you're like, wait, was that $100,000? Okay. So it's very important to put your blinders on and look for multiple ways to win. So maybe it's not just the dollar amount, but maybe it's, hey, we want a certain number of new donors this year. We want to increase by a certain percentage. What about really getting excited about scheduled gifts? Can we work between the 9th and the 19th and set a goal for how many new donors or how many donors we would like to see come in with scheduled gifts? And my favorite one is getting your staff involved. With the new peer fundraising tool that we have a staff of 24. If 24 people committed to raising $1,000 through their Giving Day page, that's $24,000. That's so significant. What we did last year is we went for a goal of 100% staff participation, and we gave a Friday afternoon off if we hit that number. So everyone's like leaving at 1 o'clock on Friday because all 24 of us set up our fundraising pages and raise funds that way. So look for other ways to really win. That's not just the bottom line compared to everyone else. And then what else is up there? Get clear on your theme, and that's fun and easy. I suggest, or what we do is get our team involved on the theme. It's a huge team building opportunity for development to think outside of the box and figure out how we're going to really celebrate Giving Day. So that was huge for us. And then my favorite and last point is really consider how you're thinking about Giving Day. I go into this activity with such an abundance mindset that we're not competing with each other, that this is a great community with so many different causes. Fall in love with your mission and find the people that are excited about that mission as well, and really go into this with a sense of abundance, because guess what? On the 20th, you have to have another plan anyway. So, like you can't just give and then just give up. You can't close your doors on the 20th. So enjoy this process. We were one of the groups that went out to Victory Plaza this last time around, and 4:45 in the morning, we had to be there. And because I live near, like across the street, I'm like, well, I have to go. I can't really send out an email asking someone to go if I'm not going to go. So I knew that I would be one of the people going, but then I sent out an email. I'm like, who wants pancakes at 7:30? Like the best pancakes ever. All you have to do is join me at 4:45. And so we did like a 2-hour countdown. We got up there at 4:45, and I'm looking at the girl who came with me, and I'm like, 7:30 pancakes, and we just blasted through the 2 hours of North Texas Giving Day. But we found a way to make something that can sound draining and, oh my gosh, you still have to work after you've gotten up at 4 o'clock. But we made it fun and really just enjoyed the process.
Thank you, Bianca. It's a good reminder. All of us wake up every day thinking about fundraising and how to raise more dollars, and it's a good reminder there is no silver bullet, and it's a marathon, not a sprint, and it's just, you just keep at it. We were reflecting on that this morning. We both have some big goals we haven't quite reached them, and it's just breathing in, breathing out, and having faith that it will come together. So thank you, Bianca. All right, Courtney, please share your approach.
Good morning. So my Possibilities is located in Plano, and we are a continuing education and job development, job training program for adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. There will be a test on that after the program. Essentially, we are a college campus for adults who learn a little bit differently. And so there's nothing like what we do, and we take that to heart and take that into our stewardship as well. So Giving Day is an event for us, actually. We do count it in our major events because it is a full day. We have all staff on site early in the morning, and we're there till it ends. Our executive director is tweeting live, Facebooking live at midnight when everything shuts down. It is a super fun event for us, and so there is a theme every year, and we start to tease that very early. I would agree with these women on the panel that it is not siloed in terms of stewardship, and so we really, what I wanted to share today is a little bit of everything. Just one quick slide on what we do. So we think outside the box and inside the box. You really can't have the box without both sides. So as it pertains to just the things that we absolutely have to do. One of the things I think we're the most proud of as an organization is that we are thankful for gifts of any size. That was alluded to with 100% staff giving or things like that, looking at other types of wins. I love that you said that. So we thank everyone. $5, $50, $500, and that's really gone a long way. We've had donor feedback, which really piggybacks on what Susan was sharing. We've had donor feedback of I only gave $20. Like people making sure, you know that wasn't $200, right? You know that wasn't $2,000, it was $20. And what a blessing for us to get to say yes, and that matters, that $20 matters. So we think at any level, all levels, and then of course we make phone calls. As the day goes on, we keep track of what is coming in, and some of those bigger gifts we know are coming, and then of course there's always those happy surprises. We live for those happy surprises. And so we farm out the calls, whether that's our executive director, our founder, our director of community engagement, somebody that has a personal tie. We serve adults that are 18 and up. Our oldest adult is 76 years old, and next year when he turns 77, we'll serve an adult who's 77. And so a lot of times our instructors we've been around 11 years, a lot of times our instructors are who is the connection to the donor, and so that person will pick up the phone. We have a plethora of relationships in the building, and so we really capitalize on who has the best relationship, who has the most meaningful relationship. 2 years ago, when we were building our new campus, we had the opportunity to put bricks in the ground, and that was huge for us. It was a $100 donation, and you had your name etched in a brick, which lasts forever. Those actually line our walkway, and so every day that I go into the building, I get to see those names. That was a huge win for us with new donors, just because they had an opportunity to put their name in the ground to honor, we call our adults hipsters, hugely important people, and so some of those bricks honor hipsters as you're walking into the building, or honor instructors, or in a memorial of somebody that was with us. So really special way to leave a mark with a $100 gift, and of course that came with a thank you too. So letters go out. Leslie from our team is here, and she is vigilant about those letters. We're just churning and burning that day. We have a lot of time during that day, and so we are very organized about who's doing what, so that we can maximize being at work for 17 hours and making it count. So now for the fun part, so outside of the box. So this is really kind of my area. I'm the engagement manager, which is a beautifully vague term that I basically get to date all kinds of people all year round. And so there are a few stories that I just wanted to share, two in particular. One has like top billing up there, and I'll get to that one last. But we have been very fortunate. Does everyone know Panelists Brewing Company in Dallas? So Panelists recently created a hipster ale. I would love to tell you that you can get it anywhere, but it is actually sold out in our first month of having it. And the proceeds of that beer do come to us, and the hipsters eventually will be part of that beer making process. So when we first launched Hipster Ale, which was way back in July, it was only available in growler locations. So Panelists doesn't can it yet. So we all went and we got excited about beer, and I ended up getting a bunch of growlers and taking those to donors. It was a unique opportunity to get in front of some of our donors who, let's face it, are men, and who don't want something with a glitter bow on it. They would rather have a growler of beer. So I was the beer girl and delivered beer all over town, and it was a way to thank our supporters in a unique way that also benefited us, which ultimately is close to the mission, right? That's why they do what they do. And so to be able to thank them not with a gift that cost us extra money or didn't benefit us, there was a direct tie to who we are and what we're there for and our mission. So we deliver beer. We also have a wine partnership with Rodney Strong, and so the end of year stewardship is all Rodney Strong wine. Again, there's a connection to the organization. It's a great gift in the holidays, and it's a great way for us to get in the door. If you say, I'm coming and I'm bringing wine, the door is wide open. So we take advantage of that. This past Friday, I took one of our largest donors to the Dior exhibit at the DMA. She is her company is a large donor of ours. She is the director of community engagement for the organization. She also, as I know, went to art school and studied fashion. And so it just felt like the right thing to do. And instead of taking her out to just another lunch or another dinner or another happy hour, we were able to spend about 2 hours together in a completely different environment. And it was purely to thank her. So we look for opportunities that are outside the box. You know, at the end of the day, your donors are people. They support your organization, but they are people with interests, with families, with things that matter to them outside of work. You are one piece of what matters to them, and I think it is our goal as development officers to figure out what those other pieces are and to find those connections. So the very last one I will leave you with is a rubber duck. So this is actually, he's a donor in the sense that he provides in-kind services for our gala. Our gala in June is our largest fundraiser, and he provides all of the AV technology. And when we were meeting about the gala, and he's done this for 4 years, so you kind of run out of ideas, right? And so we got to talking and said, well, what's new with you? And they had bought land far out and had built a pool. And so I just said, well, do you have fun floaties for the pool, or what's the best part of the pool? And he said, no, we're not there yet. Eventually, we're going to do that. So thank you, Amazon. I was able to Amazon Prime. I mean, this thing was huge. He took a picture, but it took up half of the pool. But it is the largest rubber duck floaty that I could find. And he has a little boy, and he said, this is the best thing we ever received. And every time we look at it, we think about MP. And who would have known that a rubber duck could go a long way? So we encourage you to be the duck, to give the duck, to buy the duck, whatever that is for your organization and for your donors.
Thank you, Courtney. Well, you need the approach to getting to know your donors. That's fantastic. Well, Lenita, share a little bit about Heart House with us.
Can everyone hear me? Yes. So how many in here are part of organizations $1 million or less? Okay, so I'm talking to you. So at the end of the day, when Caitlin and I talked, I said, hey, I don't have any gimmicks. I don't have any tricks. I don't have anything. I can just tell you what we do and how we leverage today. Similar to what my colleague said on a panel, it's very important about authenticity and relationship building. I think when you start there, that's going to be the source and the base of your stewardship. When I came on board as CEO of Heart House 5 years ago, it was a six-figure deficit organization. And so at the end of the day, I can't think of what thing I'm going to do to make this particular day work. I got to think of how to keep the organization open. So my strategy along the way was what type of events, what type of things are going on that we can leverage. But beyond leveraging, you got to think about, okay, how do you actually get donors? How do you retain them? And all those types of things that my colleagues talked about. And so for us, it was more about being that little engine that could. So being the CEO, I had to have a vision that I could promote, that I could get people engaged with, that was beyond just what's that next trick or that next gift. Because folks are not going to get those things from us, not yet. But the reality was being able to focus on drawing them into the message. Now, we came into an organization that we serve refugee children. And when you think about climate and all those things, everything that goes on, part of my whole strategy was how do you connect with this in environments that may not be pro-refugee, but at the same time connect them with children and talk about the fact that mental health is not being provided and it's not accessible, and we need to really focus and really zone in on that. Once we got our message down, from moving students from chaos to calm, and that's exactly what we do, is in our after-school program from Monday to 6, we're moving students from chaos to calm by providing a fun, interactive after-school program that focuses on academics, that focuses on mental health, and truly character development and exposure to children who happen to be refugee children, who happen to be immigrant children, who happen to be children who live in poverty. I think for us, that authenticity, really getting our message tailored, being able to really streamline that and use that from year one really helps us leverage what we can do on our Thanksgiving Day. So as we've grown, see, the way that this works is when you actually have more staff and you have more resources, you can pull out all the pieces that you need to really make this thing work. When you're a staff of one, with the fundraising responsibilities, or maybe a staff and a half, you got to think, okay, how can we really do this in such a way that still leverages the day and leverage what you're able to do on that day? So for us, it's been a little engine that could, each and every year, thinking of how we can leverage this piece. Because like everyone said, it's about, yes, it could be an event. Yes, it could be part of that process, but ultimately it's about the authenticity and how you can say, okay, we've used it as an organization to help bring in new donors. So on that day, we said, okay, in order for us to really push it, we got to improve our social media. So part of our strategy was improving social media, period. Not just for that day, but in general. So if you've ever followed us on social media, you'll see that, hey, we were a little, like 5 years ago, but now we have someone who's working on a regular basis, right? Then you say, okay, the logo doesn't make sense. We need to really get the logo and website, looking pristine. So we did a new rebrand. That's all part of it, because again, people want to know that they're giving to organizations that are doing a really good job, look good, and the work that you're doing is relevant. Now, I say all this to say is that oftentimes, when you're small, you're trying to do so much. Then you get disappointed when it doesn't work. Well, so-and-so organization did that. They brought the rubber duck. So-and-so organization did that, and they got Jada. Here's the thing. We're not bringing Jada. We love it. No. I would bring Jada if I can afford Jada. Let's just keep it real. But you gotta make sure you can. I'm saying this and being honest with you because you're the ones who are out there doing the work. I don't want you to sit up here and try to go get Jada when you don't even know how to bring in Jim. Jim needs to be able to bring in people, right? Because she'll tell you, before you can bring in Jada, if you're not bringing in the Jims, the Bobbies, and everybody else who's here in Dallas and really connected with these donors, you're not going to be able to bring in Jada. So I'm saying, you have to really think about where you are as an organization and think through a true strategy. If you don't have a development plan to actually execute, then how can you actually leverage North Carolina? Right. So for us, it's about looking at those bottom line developmental, the old, to me I call it old school. It's like what I've been taught 20 years ago, where it's like, you gotta have a plan, you gotta have board members engaged. When those things are not happening, you can put all the plans in the world, but the organization as a whole has to buy into this plan. And so for us, it's been a little engine that could, being realistic about what we can do, being honest about what works, and having realistic goals. So when I can't come into an organization 5 years ago, when the year prior they barely made $2,000 for 25th day. So then my goal was $5,000. Once I exceeded that goal, it was like, hey, we did it. So now it's what's a strategy and motion. The next year it was 10,000. Okay, we kicked that butt. Then it's like, okay, let's bring on some other pieces and see what we need to do. I had to put those blinders on because there was no way. I mean, I'm looking at organizations like, they getting 100, 200,000? How's that happening? Oh my God, I'm depressed. I want to do this. And then you realize, no. How do you leverage it? So when you learn better, you do better. And when you figure it out, so we would get introduced to new donors. We would apply some of these same skills. You call them, you get to know them. We would invite them to tours. All those things that you knew is just foundational developmental things. You may go to an exam with them, or sometimes you just sit down and have a conversation, say, hey, this is what we're needing to do. This is where we're going, and then you can help us grow. You can help us take it to the next level. A lot of them will tell you, hey, I think you should have this, or you should have that. And I just honestly say, look, at the end of the day, those are great things. In order for us to get there, we need this first. And so then now I invite them into that particular mission, and we all accomplish that goal. And when that goal is secured, then I can say, hey, for this year, I want to tie it into our back to school campaign. So now this year, or actually last year, we had a little coffee mug and some things, we tied it into it. But it was really our fall giving, our fall kind of annual plan. It was all part of it. And we were able to leverage this beautiful day because let's just face it, this day is amazing. There's a lot of competition out there. You gotta really going into it, you need to know who your people are, who's actually gonna be involved, who wants to engage in your organization, what folks on the ground that you can have to actually help promote. You can't do it alone. And I think that that's something that we tend to try to do, is try to figure out how to do this, how to make it, and you get disappointed. I think if you set realistic goals, have authenticity, build relationships just as part of the organization as a whole, but have a plan to execute, then and only then, especially when you're a small organization, you're going to be able to leverage this particular day. It can be frustrating if you don't have a plan, if it's not part of your plan. It can be frustrating when you are just, oh, it's coming up, and then you're a month, and you're 2 weeks away, and you're thinking, okay, no one's giving. No, in order for that to happen, there has to be some strategies in place, and you have to really know what you can and cannot do as an organization on how to actually leverage it. It is a very important day. Like when I think of all the giving type of, like the big giving days throughout the country, ours is the best. I mean, we have the absolute best because we have this amazing foundation who's leveraging it, who's getting it out there. But in order to leverage that, you have to do some groundwork that's going to help you take this day to the next level for your organization, but you're realistic about what that looks like. So I don't have any points to give, like not any steps. For me, because if you got to really think through you as an organization and really what you want to put into it and figure out how you want to leverage it. And for me, that's how we've been able to do it at Heart House. Slow and steady, keeping those core values of building relationships, being authentic, and incorporating the North Texas Giving Day into our development plan and strategy, and using it as an opportunity to attract new donors, get our folks out there on the ground to invite people to give on that day, and then we get to work and get to know those people post that day.
Thank you, Lenita. Well, I'm hearing a lot of common themes here: persistence, grit, never giving up, and you, all four of you, have shared such phenomenal lessons learned. I'd like to ask, you talk a lot about what we should do, what we should focus on, really making any of our fund development plan, our goals work for our organization in that unique period of time. Now I want to hear a little bit more about what we shouldn't do. If you have any examples of what we lovingly refer to as stewardship stumbles, and things that you've done in the past that have not worked, and lessons learned that help pay forward in this particular area of work, I'd love to hear those.
I'll start. So, and this has been a big change for us this year. So last year we came onto the scene and we doubled our North Texas Giving Day campaign, and we had all this energy and we were high flying and we had every gimmick out there. And one of the stumbles that we made was with our social media campaign. And so we spent all this time and we would create videos and we would create this content, and then we would have this burst where it'd be like healing hands all over the place for 2 days, and then it'd be nothing for 15 days because we had to create more content. And then it'd be healing hands for 2 days and then nothing for 15 days. And that was a problem because we didn't really gain any new followers on social media or consistency, and it was just kind of like, whoa, you're too much, too quick. And so this year, our change and our learning from that, and we can use Google Analytics to kind of see the results of this. So we have a very specific social media campaign. And when I say specific, I'm not a marketer. I've got a great teammate, Adrian, and what we do is on the first of the month, we literally sit there and plan out every single post for that month. We say, what's our feed, what's the pictures, and what's the messaging? And then we employed this year a 2-1 strategy. For every one North Texas Giving Day post that we make, we have to make 2 Healing Hands posts, so that it's both our organization and the event. And so that's really, we're hoping, we don't know yet, but we're hoping this will create more consistency rather than such kind of erratic behavior, because I think that that's the one danger of North Texas Giving Day, is that it's too noisy and it's too much, and everybody's coming on strong in the last 10 days, and they didn't have this consistent behavior from you all year long.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have stumbled. So one of the things we attempted to do, so we had the new executive leadership team come on and we had all these communication plans, and we're like, okay, the next thing we need is to launch an annual giving campaign. And so we burst onto the scene with a new giving campaign with a very aggressive goal, and we found that we weren't hitting our numbers. And one of the main reasons was we were probably a year too soon, because it can't always be, there were too many changes that we expected our donors to absorb and respond to, and we were a year too early with our giving campaign. So that's very important to pay attention to the cadence of your messaging and to what you're sharing. And to Lenita's point, when you have such a specific mission, sex trafficking, I talked with Caitlin a little bit about this, it's very specific on who's going to support that. People make their moral judgments on whether or not they think this person is a victim, a survivor. Is it a choice? What's she doing? Can't she just get a job? So you're fighting through all of that. You're not going to be able to take a blanketed message and expect people to respond. So we had to spend the rest of the year normalizing who this woman is, showing what allows her to end up in this situation, the childhood trauma, the socioeconomic situations. So now next year, when we go into a giving campaign, we have helped donors reframe and understand who we're serving, and then we can expect a better yield. So I think we were a year too early on that with all that we wanted to share, and we weren't able to reap the results of that.
Thank you. I think too, they're right. I think for us, that messaging is so important. When you are a nimble staff, you're trying to move to the next thing, you got the vision, now you want everybody to get on board. You gotta spend time, and this has been a huge learning lesson for me personally. You have to spend time with all of the stakeholders and give them the type of time they need to embrace whatever you're doing. So when it comes to like a campaign and all those things, you may say, hey, I sent this to the board in an email, I had a meeting, we should be good. And you realize, like, no, there's just, because you're thinking, everybody's out in the organization, they're excited, they're board members, it's great. These are donors who know us, and like Bianca said, sometimes you can, the idea can still be solid. It's a solid idea, don't throw it out. But you have to learn that change management is so important, and that pays, and it's so important to like understand all those pieces of making sure that the message is simple. Like everyone can't get the same message. Even though it's the same message, everybody can't get it the same way. So you gotta think through those various strategies, and if you don't spend that time thinking, what's out there sounds very rushed, it sounds like you're not planning, it sounds like it's not aligned. And Addison, you look a crazy person, and it's like, no, this doesn't make sense. And it's like, no, stop thinking about whether or not it makes sense or not. Just think through how to communicate it well. Spend that time reflecting on, if I have this new thing that needs to happen, or if I want you to get engaged, like what happens to you when you get money? Just take all of this off and just say, okay, when you decide to give, whether it's through a religious organization or something, what pushes you to give? You take it back to that bare basic thing, it helps you really understand, okay, if I'm not giving regularly to this thing, why? And when you start thinking about that, it helps you think, okay, maybe I need to stop with all of these things and really just get back to the basics. But I'll tell you, when you're trying to push something, think through all of the ways in which you want to communicate it and think about the various stakeholders. Because if you don't do that, it will bite you in the butt.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to the theme of nobody wants to get married on the first date, unfortunately. And the donor stewardship is all about building relationships, building authentic relationships. I want to dive into how exactly are you all getting to know your donors? On the North Texas Give Day team, we spend a lot of time trying to analyze donor behavior through Give Day as well. What is inspiring them? How many gifts are they making? To when? All of that. But I'd love to know, how are you building relationships? Is it one-on-one coffees? Is it surveys? Is it events? Small, I'd love to hear more.
I'll jump in with this one. So I'm going to be I'm going to own this, but you kind of need to be a creeper. You really kind of have to do your homework. And The internet is an amazing wealth of information. I'm loving the head nods. Y'all are creepers too, and I love it. There's so much that you can learn, and where it is appropriate, whether you are friending somebody on Facebook, whether you are following them on LinkedIn, and that comes with that dating thing. Thank God I'm not doing that right now, but when I think about when I was dating somebody and trying to get background information on them, you didn't just friend them right away. You kind of did your background information, and then when it was appropriate, you maybe asked to be friends or whatever that looks like. The rules are the same, y'all, with this. Like you figure out, where do I take that step? One of the best days for me are when a donor friends me, because then now the door is wide open. Now I get to just see all of your stuff. But it's really, it has to come from that authentic place. I think that's the theme of this panel, is it has to be authentic. So now I can see that your child is starting kindergarten. So I'm sending you a note. Hey, I know that transition is hard. I have a kindergartner. And really, again, treating your donors like the people that they are. They have lives. They love what you do. That's why they give to what you do. But that's not the only thing that matters to them. So it's figuring out what is happening in their life. And there are so many, you'd be amazed at how many little things can really send off flags. And so whether you have to take notes and just keep track, and of course not when and that's up to you, but when I'm one-on-one with Coffee, I don't have a notebook. But you better believe that I'm in the bathroom at the end of it, jotting down notes. Son is 16 and plays volleyball, whatever it is. And then those are the things that ping me. So I'm driving in the car and I hear a story on the radio about such and such, and that's my go-to then, and my excuse, if you will, for reaching out to that person. Hey, I was just listening to this and I thought about you, and how's that going? And so it's very natural. And so are we talking about my possibilities? No. But when they think about, I got that email asking about how my triathlon training is going. Well, that email came from me. I represent my possibilities, and so it all just kind of folds together, and now and I'm quick to say, now we're friends. But we are, and all of us in this room have some natural talents and gifts, and you need to use them. So if you are really good at figuring out where people live, work, and play, I think it's also important, where is the community that you serve? Where we work, where I work, happens to be also right where I live. So I run into people at the grocery store. I run into, and I always have eyes open. You are always working, and you're always working because this is a cause that you believe in, and so it's not work. And so just always keeping your eyes open, your ears open, making those connections when you're in a meeting of somebody that you can introduce to somebody else. I had a meeting with a car dealership, and in just kind of our small talk, we got to talking about her son and the son's baseball team, and that they're looking for volunteer opportunities. Well, I know I can't have them volunteer at MP. They're not old enough. I would need them during the school day. But that doesn't close off my hat to caring about this person. And so I connected her with somebody else. And so that doesn't, on the surface, maybe that doesn't support my organization for the moment. But in the long run, which this is, if we're looking at it as not dating, but as marriage, in the long run, that's the connection that she's going to remember, is that not only was I paying attention to that was what was important to her, but also I was secure enough in our relationship to point her to somebody else, knowing that that investment of attention and of concern would eventually pay back, probably tenfold, for being honest.
Love it. Any other comments? I have one more question before I'm going to open it up to the group. Okay. So my last question is, you all have given, me personally, so many more ideas, and just have thrown out all kinds of credible best practices and strategies. But thinking about capacity, we never have enough time, resources, funding, staff, you name it. And if we had to really focus on, if we just had to do one thing when it comes to donor stewardship, what would you say we really need to keep in mind is one of the most important things to do?
Well, I think at our table, just in response to you and Susan's presentation, I would say it's that personal touch. Throw every stock letter out that we have our CEO sign. Throw every blank template out that we send on emails, and either pick up the phone or write a handwritten note. There is no better way that you can spend your time than, just like what everyone said, than personally connecting. And so in a day of 500 things to do, and you're probably only going to get 20 of them done, I would just encourage you to really, and it's a renewed challenge for myself too, to look at how much of your day are you dedicating to a personal interaction with a donor.
Love it. I would say, if you don't have a development plan, create one. I think that that's going to be your focus, where you're talking about a lot of these intentional things. So if you don't have one as an organization, spend time learning how to do it. They're not difficult to create, but when you have a plan, that plan can give you the stage that you need or the framework that you need to bring in the support that you need for your organization. No one wants to give when you're begging. They just don't. And so when you have a plan and a strategy, that gives you leverage to invite someone in. And then you talk about, okay, what's my plan? After someone gives, we're going to make sure that they get an email first. Because that email, like if you give online, all that comes in, so they get an automatic email from me. Then from there, we give them the official letter. And that letter, we try to be cookie cutter, but very personal, and a personal note from me. And it's a lot of work. And then, like we said, find out what you're doing on LinkedIn, find out what we do here, all those things. But all that starts with a plan. And that plan, think through how you want to be moved or loved or cared for. Because when you think about yourself and think about things that you enjoy, that you enjoy, like it's those notes, it's those things that just really set you off. But I think it all has to start with the plan. True plan of how you want to connect. And sometimes that plan may switch up along the way, or you may learn some things, like an event like this, and you can say, hey, I want to do that for next year. But I think if you have a plan, it keeps you from going 500 ways, and it keeps you from, go talk to Oprah, or go do this. And it's like, no, we're going to stick to the plan, and then leverage that plan and figure out how to readjust the plan. But I think if you have a solid plan that's really focused on, yes, raising the goals, but also loving your donors well. You can't do it without it. I think if you have that sets you off and sets you in the right direction to really develop and raising the funds that you really, and be very realistic about what you actually can do.
I'll just add two quick things to your point. Your agency can't survive off of windfalls. If you're just waiting on one big check from someone from somewhere, that's not a plan. Your agency will not survive off of a windfall. I would say the one thing to keep in mind is to always look for opportunities to show your donors how you're making a difference. They don't want to just give their money into a black hole of problems. We are very clear on all the problems that exist in the world, and we spend a lot of time, rightfully so, shining the light on the problem. But if you have made one difference, you have to let your donors know what that is. You can't tell every story all the time, but I always look to tell a story. So every interaction I have, it's what story can I tell today that shows how we've made a difference with the problem.
Piggyback off of that too. So when I think about all the ways that we spend time in our day, I would encourage you to be as close to the mission as possible. So for me, it is having lunch duty in the lunchroom with our hipsters, because it is a wealth of experiences and stories. And I may never even share those with a donor, but my cup is full now. And so now when I go out and I'm thanking people, I'm thanking them from this place of, you will never fully know what kind of impact you've made, but I hope that I am that vessel by which you see how excited I am and see how hopeful I am that we are making a change and that you're part of that. Or if it's now I'm coming to you from a place of need, that it's pouring out of me because I feel so strongly about hipster X that really could benefit from this therapy that you could help us underwrite or support. So it's being aware of why you're here and why you do what you do, and being as close to that as possible, so that without even thinking, whether you're picking up the phone or you're writing that letter, it's a lot easier to write letters when you genuinely believe what you're writing and when you genuinely want to thank this person for it, and you know that without them you couldn't do this. And so when you are taking care of you, we're big proponents of self-care at our organization, as I'm sure all of us are. But when you're taking care of yourself and you're so tied to what you believe in and why you're working this hard, it's impossible for that light to be dulled when you're meeting with somebody or talking to somebody or sending out an email or a letter.
So I've been thinking a lot about two words lately, gratitude and grit, and I feel like both of those have come out a lot in this discussion. A colleague recently told me that she starts her day with many cups of coffee, like I do. But for the first 30 minutes of her day, while she's enjoying her coffee, she is writing thank you notes just for 30 minutes, just to start the day. I thought that is so brilliant, because then you have gone and thanked some of your super fans, your donors, your board members, your staff, whoever they may be, and you've started your day with gratitude, and then you can get to the grit. Well, at this point, I want to open it up. I want to open up to the room for questions. We have some staff who are walking the room with microphones so everyone can hear. Please take this opportunity to ask additional questions of our four phenomenal panelists. Who's going to kick us off? Yes.
So I work for a school, and our PTA has a campaign going on while Texas Giving Day is. So how can we tie those two things together? Because we don't use North Texas Giving Day as an event, it's just an opportunity to give. So how can we merge those two things together and maximize our effort in the community?
So is the school or the PTA registered? The school's registered to participate. Okay. Well, go ahead.
So we did this for my son's school. He attends Kramer Elementary. And so we have a campaign of like 50,000 to raise, and I introduced North Texas Giving to them last year. And one of the things we did was just said, hey, this is a way to kick it off and back to school. Again, that back to school thing is really something that's easy to do because people all get excited about back to school. But one of the things you want to do by the end of the year is kind of give parents a little know the date, because they already know the date coming up. I mean, that's what's so great about this event. They're set, they're solid. You kind of infuse yourself in it. But we actually did a separate application, if you will, for Texas Giving Day. So for the PTA. That to me makes more sense because we were able to really leverage it and bring in funds and do it that way. And we use it as a back to school piece. And we just made it where it's like on that day, the school had the fourth graders kind of think of some campaign. Kids are just smart. They can do it. You introduce it to them. And when we introduced it to the kids last year again, they've never done it before. And so they raised $6,000 just basically from August to September, like whatever the date was last year, just because of the fact that the kids got involved. They made it a day. We put together some flyers, told the parents about it, and every little meeting we had from that August startup date to that September to the event, we just kept pushing, and said, hey, $25 is all we need to do a piece, and we just leveraged it. But I think ultimately, when we had our own PTA one versus it being the bigger Kramer one, it was the Kramer PTA one. It really did help us kind of have it special, pump it up, make it part of the parents. So that's what we did. So we introduced it. And I thought it was a good strategy, at least to bring in, especially with the PTA being charged with bringing in $50,000 for the whole year. That's what we did.
Hi, this question is about individual donors and building those donors and sustaining them. So let's just say North Texas Giving Day happens, you have the best North Texas Giving Day ever. How do you take that momentum and leverage it to make sure that you sustain those donors as continuous individual donors throughout the year, forever.
So one way that we do, so for example, if you get some new donors, right? This big cache of people coming in and you're gonna get a bunch of new donors. So we have two specific things that we do. First of all, 48 hours after North Texas Giving Day, every single donor gets a phone call, a personal phone call. So you're tired, you're just not sleeping for 3 days. You just gotta block out your calendar and know that's what's happening, because that matters. Like she said, doesn't matter if it's $20 or $2,000, somebody's gotta get a personal phone call to say, hey, thank you. And then we have a consistent avenue that we always just try to engage people, whether I'm meeting someone out at the grocery store, I've met them at an event, and that is a monthly lunch tour. And any organization of any size can do this. And the whole purpose of this lunch tour, and even if you can't afford to give everyone lunch, then make it a coffee tour or whatever it is that you can afford, but it's a 1 hour opportunity to see who we are, how we serve, and why we serve. We don't ask them for a thing. There's nothing that they have to fill out, complete. We're not saying, oh my gosh, we need volunteers. It's literally just trying to continue a conversation and create a framework for how we can relate to them. And so since we started this 2 years ago, we've had close to 800 people come through lunch tours, and about 25% of those transfer into a volunteer or a donor. So it's a great way, and then that's a way to engage someone farther, to say, oh my gosh, you came to the lunch tour, would you invite somebody else to this lunch tour? And so that's kind of how we start the process all over again.
Yeah, I would say volunteerism is a really cool way. So like, I'll make it basic, like real basic. Do you have a donor management system? Because when you have that and it actually works for you, you can set up some things, target them as these givers on this day, and then be strategic on when you're going to actually connect with them and kind of schedule it out. Jennifer's exactly right. Within that 48 hours, folks need a real phone call. Email, some form of communication to let them know that you have set the bar, you have made the difference, you have made our day, we appreciate you. And then once you show them that, I think, again, like my friend said here, you go into the pre-pro mode and really get to know them. You figure out what's going on, look at their LinkedIn, their interest. What's the thing you do on Google? You put them in the little Google thing and it pops up where you can see where everybody is. It's important that you have that so you can see what's going on. And then you start to engage them in a way that makes sense for your organization. So whether it's monthly coffees, whether it's tours, we do after school snack, things like that, where you connect. But you gotta think of ways in which you gotta set up an engagement strategy in order to bring them in. Again, the bigger piece that I'm hoping that you're here to say is take the time to develop the strategies and the plan. So when the abundance comes, you can infuse it into what you have. Whereas if you don't have a strategy and plan, what typically happens is that, yeah, you get these donors, but they're not going to be retained year after year, month after month. Because when you do have problems, not if, those are the ones you can call on and say, hey, we're having a shortfall this month. Because you can't call big funders, but you can call these individuals and say, hey, there's things going on, we need your help. But because you've taken care of them along the way and infuse them into a lot of your work, they're engaged, they're involved, they're excited. But it takes having those strategies, making sure that they're into the system, a system that actually works, that you can put some timely things onto.
Well, and keep in mind, Jasmine, to celebrate, share what you've done with those funds. What difference did it make to your organization? What program were you able to double or grow? And so give them specifics on how those investments helped as well. Okay, that's another question.
My question has things with what I heard earlier, and I believe I heard the word over communicate. So just to give you an idea where I'm at, I'm fairly new to this particular organization, not the nonprofit world, not fundraising, not all of that. I've been in nonprofit almost 10 years. And what I wanted to do was I started literally the second week, I got this ED saying, hey, I want to do this campaign, I want to do this money. And I'm like, whoa, we've been blessed with this organization to have an angel donor for the last 7 years, so we haven't had to fundraise really at all. We've been fairly blessed and taken care of. But now we're in that part of cultivating, and I'm focusing on coming in, educating, and stewardship. So instead of just a campaign on asking, I would like to do a lot of educating within this next coming month. What does it look like for me to not over-communicate? Is it okay to put a subtle ask, even though I am educating? And when I say educating, I'm literally putting out content about specific components of our programming, why you need to know these components, how I can educate you better to leverage us in the community. So over-communicating, how does that balance look? And how can I put a subtle ask in there without coming out full-blown ask? Because that's not what this campaign is for.
Yeah, I think first thing is to not see over-communicating as a bad term. So it's automatic to think when you're overdoing something that's overdone, which means do less. But that isn't necessarily it. It's just paying attention to what you are communicating. So if you frame over-communicating positively, then it's not a bad thing. I know one of the things that your CEO or your board probably doesn't want to hear is we need time. But sometimes when you are helping to shape a message, you're going to need some time. So for example, on our social media, we find that, and we have a really significant social media following, about 20,000 across the different platforms. But what gets the most engagement is stories about sex trafficking. So every news story that comes out, whether it's happening in Dallas or in another city or another part of the world, that's what people want to see and that's what they want to share. So that education piece is really important. So we'll share all the articles. The next thing they want to know is more about us and the staff. Like, is this a cool place to work? How do you guys get through every day hearing these tough stories? So when the team goes to Orange Theory on a Friday, we post a picture of everyone in their gym clothes. But in between those posts, then you can make an ask that makes sense. One of the things we did is we released our annual report and we spliced it up into different graphics. So every other post is about a different part of the program. But when we first decided to post it, because like you, we schedule out our social media just a week in advance. So every day we have some type of content out there, but we schedule it out a week in advance. The first time that they posted it, it was connected to our donation page. And I'm like, no. We're not asking for money. We're telling people what we've done. So we took a snippet of our annual report and then said, to view the rest, click here. So after a series of those, then the ask makes sense. But you don't want every post to be connected to an ask. As you know, the other thing we do is send out a monthly newsletter, and it includes a mission moment. So it talks about our members, it talks about our women's group, our men's group, and not every month do we have a donate button. It just depends on, does it make sense this month? With Giving Day coming up, then we try not to do any other asks around that because we know we have a Giving Day ask coming. Then we have our luncheon ask coming, so we for sure don't want you to spend all your money on that because we're going to turn around and need money in October. So it really depends on what works for your organization, but it's very smart of you to think of how to over-communicate and not frame that as something that's negative.
Thank you.
Hello. Hi. It's on the same topic, but it has to do with the communication with the donors in general, not only on social media platforms. I've been a donor, and now as leading a nonprofit, I can tell both sides of the road. And one of the things that when I've been a donor, I don't like is that I feel spam. So my email is full with communication that it's irrelevant to me, even when it has to do with the organization or with the mission. And then I'm receiving extra communication that it have made me unsubscribe or step out of that communication because of that. So my question has to do with how do we maintain active, vibrant communication with our donors without falling into every 3 days or every day spam in their mailbox. I'm asking something so practical as the titles of the newsletters, of the emails, of the phone calls, or the letters that we mail direct to them, to the content. How do you guys, what is the criteria that you guys to communicate and that communication be relevant to people that you guys have in your database?
So I think it's important to know your donor base first. I think based off of your donor base, that gives you an idea of how to set your strategy. So for example, some organizations may have a certain generation of donors. So like if they have older donors, paper may be a better thing, like, you know, like mailings. Then if you have a lot of millennial donors, you want to do something that's tech, you know, something along those lines. Emails is kind of the dinosaur that's a little hard because you got to still do it to show that you've done it, but you can't heavily rely on it. I think like Bianca said, I think it's more of when you kind of understand your donors and really get an idea of what works for them. So like for example, if you know that that thing's going to go into a spam folder and things of that nature, then you got to think of other strategic things to do. So it may be where you segment your donors and figure out other strategies on communicating, like on how to actually communicate what works best. So for us, I do a board email. That's what I do every other week, just to kind of keep them engaged with things. So it's kind of like internal, keep them going on, get them engaged that way. Then we do just a month. 1 month where we just do one email a month to our bigger donor group. Unless there's something else going on or a campaign going on, we may increase it a bit. But to your point, I don't want our donors to get overwhelmed. But at the same time, we gotta keep it going. Social media is where we do something on a regular, consistent basis. We post something daily, we keep it fresh. Facebook and Instagram is where we really keep it fresh. We can improve in Twitter and LinkedIn. But at least in those two areas, we keep that going, we keep that mostly programmatic. So that's what we do a lot of the program highlights and things like that. But honestly, it's like it depends on the actual email communication thing that you use. Like Boomerang, for example, has a really nice email piece that we use, and we like that a lot. So it doesn't always go into people's spam; they actually get it. So there's a lot of different things to do, but I think that you start with knowing your donors, knowing who's in your database, so you can actually segment and figure out what makes sense. Do research on what's a really good way to communicate, because again, I want to steer you away from gimmicks and force you to think through strategies. I think to think through strategies, like your gimmick can be a part of that strategy, but it can't be the main thing that's going to help you get the victory that you want. So you need to research what makes sense, what communication style works for your donors and for your segmentations of your donors. Because when you know that, that helps you think through what better way to do it. Like you may want to do more of email because you have people who are email friendly, but then so it really does depend on your actual donors and what they actually want.
I have a little different perspective to add, exact on the same theme of what Lenita said. 100% strategy, know your donor, so that you're not just getting on gimmick. And this is coming, to be fair, I think we're one of the larger organizations, so we have a staff of 117. It's a 2-person development staff and an awesome CEO. So we do sort of have 3 people who are giving their attention to donors. So I do want to say that. So our bandwidth is a little bit bigger. But we go the opposite direction. So we spend very little time on that monthly sort of communication. We have Boomerang. We probably do it quarterly, and we do our Facebook page. But instead, if someone was to look at my Outlook calendar, you would see 8,000 green highlights of, like, for example, last Friday, Adrian and I were texting our good friend and volunteer, Sandy Allen, because she's in Hawaii and it was her 50th anniversary. And we're texting her and she's texting us back a silly picture. And so we just spend more time on that individual communication rather than, and a couple times a year, do the big messaging. But, and then lastly, as it relates to North Texas Giving Day, we spend so much time talking about the exact date that our direct mail is going to drop, right? So for us, we try as best we can to have a strategy and a plan to say, I don't want it to drop when everybody else is going to drop. I want to do it a month ahead of time, or I want to make my phone call on this day because I know my donors will respond on this day. Again, back to Lenita's point, knowing your donors and trying to be different instead of just following a generic plan?
So we are just about out of time. So first, I want to give a huge thanks to these 4 phenomenal panelists. I know I learned a lot this morning, and although there are not any silver bullets, I think we're all taking away incredible gems. And I think everyone in this room, when we all wake up and are thinking about fundraising every day, know that you're not alone. So if you have additional burning questions, please stay and come up and talk to CFT staff or any of these panelists. This, as Susan mentioned, this wraps up 20 trainings around North Texas Giving Day. We really want to probably they're looking at my face on video, but we really want them to be meaningful and we want them to be helpful. So please text us your feedback. We will be sending out a survey later on, and we will have incentives for filling those out. So thank you all. I hope good luck with everything, and please stay, get more coffee, water, and ask any additional questions. Oh, there are yard signs for you on your way out, and there's also a 1-page document that gives you ideas for how to further engage your donors. So thank you all so much. And we will